Good afternoon and welcome to our latest Milwaukee Press Club Virtual Newsmaker. I am your host for today, Press Club President Gene Miller, also heard on News Radio 620 WTMJ, Wisconsin's Morning News. That's my day job. Otherwise, I'm here in the man cave hosting Newsmakers. So welcome aboard, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Our guest today is Milwaukee Police Chief Alfonso Morales, along with his attorney, Franklin Gimbel. But before we get to the proceedings of the day, we do have to do some business in terms of thanking our sponsors, the folks who help make this possible, that being Spectrum News One, our presenting sponsor, and also our sustaining sponsor, Miller Koss. Then there's our event partner for today, WizPolitics.com. They partner with us for a number of events in Milwaukee, part of an ongoing series. They are sponsored by UW Milwaukee, the Wisconsin Academy of Global Education and Training, 1125 at Pabst, Milwaukee Police Association, the Firm Consulting, the Medical College of Wisconsin, and Spectrum. We will meet our panel just after we hear from the chief. Chief Alfonso Morales, of course, has been a member of the Milwaukee Police Department since 1993, serving in a host of capacities up until he became interim chief. That was in February of 2018. Most recently appointed to a 4-year term in December of last year. The Fire and Police Commission most recently issued a series of directives that it wants the chief to answer to. The deadline for that will be Thursday, August 6th. So we are thankful for the chief and for his attorney to work us in before that deadline approached, as this topic is, of course, of utmost concern to any number of people in our community. This is what a lot of folks are talking about. That's why we're glad we were able to squeeze it in. So without further ado, let's have some opening comments from Milwaukee Police Chief Alfonso Morales.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you for having us here. I'll say us. I usually say the Milwaukee Police Department, but I'm also here with my attorney, Frank Gimbel. There's a reason why I have an attorney here today, and I'll discuss that at the end of what I'm about to say. But 2020 has been a very challenging time, not only for our nation, the city of Milwaukee, and the Milwaukee Police Department. We have had a number of different challenges. After working so hard in 2018 and 2019 of bringing not only the Part 1 crime numbers down, but increasing community relationships and also our working with our system partners, there was a lot of success. We never planned for 2020 or knew what we were in for, but we started off with some interesting cases at the beginning of the year, from violence with an intimate partner or domestic violence issues, as well as mental health issues that resulted in a spike in violent crime. One of those incidents we remember as Molson Coors, tragedy over in Molson Coors that resulted in 5 deaths. Then we came in contact with, we had the pandemic that hit our nation, which resulted in the stay-at-home order, which increased issues with family violence as well as drugs. We had an incident where there were another 5 family members killed at the hands of a family member. And I'm going to bring up specific cases to show the anomalies that have been occurring in 2020. Other incidents of family violence, I can bring up 4 different incidents that account for 15 homicides alone for this year. As we can see, we've talked about a double in violent crime, a double, well over 100%, 200% increase in violent crime. It's specific to gun violence. The issues that were initiated from the incident in Minnesota have resulted in protests, some of those that turned violent, and that was at the commencement of June, ending in May 29th. The ending of May 29th started some of these issues. So the Milwaukee Police Department has been going through a number of challenges. What I am very proud to say about our department, both sworn and civilian, that even through the challenges of dropping in staffing, of COVID, where it's easy to say, you know what, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to stay at home, our members came to work. Sworn and civilian through the COVID. They worked more than 16 hours a day, both sworn and civilian, to handle the issues that we had in our first week of June with civil cases of civil unrest. And in addition to that, being under the public eye as a piece where law enforcement is an easy target to blame for issues that are going out through not only Milwaukee, but through our society and our nation. And the level of support coming from the front line to the top, and as well as the citizens of Milwaukee, the residents of Milwaukee, it gives us a sense of purpose to be here. That's the energy that drives us to come to work, which is a result when we are under scrutiny and under attack, that I felt the need to obtain an attorney, Frank Gimbel, to help us during these times, that it's no longer just public scrutiny, but ways to attack us where they're saying, hey, we're thinking about removing you. And which is the reason why I have my attorney here. I really want to fight for this city. There's a number of people that I work for, the people that put me in this position. There's no one individual, there's no one group. It's the level of leadership that we have in the city here that comes from the down to the top and from the top to the down to the bottom that gives us our energy to be here.
Thank you very much, Chief. Let's meet our panel of journalists for today. From the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Gina Barton; from Spectrum News 1, Jason Fechner; and from Wisconsin Public Radio, Corey Hess. Audience questions are welcome. We will do those at the end of today's session with about maybe 10 minutes left or so until the top of the hour. I want to get you out of here by 1 o'clock. So we will let the questioning begin with the Journal-Sentinel's Gina Barton.
Hi, Chief. I have so many questions. I know we won't get to all of them, but my first one kind of has several parts to it. So several weeks ago, you said that you felt like the police were being crucified by some of the protesters and by the community. And just now you were talking about, some continuing attacks on you and on police. So what are you personally doing to improve relations with protesters? Who are the community leaders you're talking with on a regular basis? And what are you learning from them? And what do you think you need to be doing differently to kind of help bring the police department and the community together and kind of get past some of these serious conflicts that are happening?
The challenge starts with the pandemic, because it makes it difficult for the interaction. Obviously, even wearing these masks currently makes it difficult to do the community outreach that we were used to doing and that we've implemented in 2018 and 2019. However, we have reached out. There's community organizations. Unfortunately, we're doing everything via teleconference or via Zoom. There's organizations out there. I don't want to name one in particular, but we have reached out. We've done some of them that have reached the media was just last week. We did one with the FBI. We invited different community leaders, connection to some of the political leaders, and had a roundtable, open discussion. I do believe the media was aware of it. I don't know if they were allowed to attend it, but those were open discussions to, just to work off of the strengths and weaknesses. Gina, I will tell you that one of the things where I pushed back in that meeting is in 2018, when I took over as chief, I'd had roundtables with city leadership, both intergovernmental partners, system partners, and community leaders. There was one particular community leader at this meeting that said nothing has changed. And I called that particular leader out because he was at the roundtable. He was at my office when we worked on some of these changes that are implemented in the ACLU lawsuit, the community interaction that we use, the town hall meetings that we go to. So my call out is to that particular person is, when you say nothing has changed, we've done X, Y, and Z, and you were a part of it. Wouldn't you consider that change? And I think it's easy to jump on the bandwagon and say nothing has changed, but police has been in reform for the last 40 years. And let's just, bring up some of the give credit to where credit is due. We're not perfect. And the community piece is something that we have to work on daily. That incident that occurred in Minnesota is things that set us back. We can say that those things set us back, but let's not ignore a lot of the good work that has been done with community and work off of that to continue to build.
And just a quick follow-up, can you give me some specific things that you are doing at this point in time to try to continue to build, specific actions you're taking or particular people you're working with?
Yes, we're working with, if you notice, we had an op-ed regarding the, what the funding looks like. Those are going to be, if we want to do it right, those are open discussions with community. And I say this because it's easy for any one of us to come up with a solution, but what's the input from the community to see what that actually looks like? And what we may discuss as a Milwaukee for Milwaukee is to reach out to different, use that as our plan moving forward after August, after the DNC, and really reach out to different areas of the city of Milwaukee, north side, south side, east side, and west, to have that input from different levels of community leadership.
Okay, thank you. Jason?
Chief, you touched on this previously in an op-ed about it can't be us versus them, it has to be us. You've marched with protesters before. You had previously joined the Milwaukee Bucks in their protest. And on Monday night, you attended a Defend the Police rally in West Allis. For those out there who can't believe that you can do both, can you support both sides of this issue right now? Because in this political climate, it seems that it has to be one side or the other.
No, if I'm listening to your question right, absolutely, you can do both. I just think that we can't allow perception to be people's reality, and if we don't engage, and there has to be, again, I can't make every type of event, but I think it was very helpful for the one with the Bucks. Here is not only business, but you have part of the community with the players that can help push a message. And for me, for law enforcement, it's promoting the law enforcement image. So we have to find ways where we can connect with groups and organizations that can help you extend that or maximize it as much as possible. And we have to be able to find those organizations that can challenge us like the Bucks, but will also help us in promoting that image and helping us work with the community. That's a big plus. The incident that occurred yesterday, or the fundraiser that occurred yesterday, the proceeds went, and I want to mention this, the proceeds go to the families of fallen officers. The reason why I want to bring that out is there were protesters out for that. And again, it's everybody's right to protest, but we have to have meaning behind that. So this was a fundraiser. It was to back law enforcement, but to fundraise for fallen officers. So we also have to see where is the happy medium here. If you're going to have protests, what is the meaning behind protesting a fundraiser for fallen officers? Now, the reason why I bring that up is we have to work together for it to be us. And when we have an outcry, when we have something to say, how can we work together and have those intelligent conversations? Because it can't be one-sided as well. I hope that answered your question.
It does, and a quick follow-up to it. What's your message to those on either side of the issue that has been so polarizing up to this point right now that you do need to step into the middle and kind of walk in each other's shoes to a certain degree?
It's important that we're able to discuss our frustrations, but also find a way where we can work together to help what is actually the problems. When we look at crime, and I'm going to bring it in the sense of crime, because I often say Milwaukee is a safe city. It is. In the last 2 years, we brought those crime numbers down, and we never took sole credit for it. It was a team effort, and everybody gets credit for it. The problem when you don't work together, which it's this year, and part of it has to do with the pandemic, but when you don't work together, you have these problems. And I often look at where our problems occurring. So when we say there's a spike in crime, I usually, in the last 2 years, I talked about 14 neighborhoods that accounted for 46% of the violent crime, the gun violence. This year, when we've already exceeded our homicide numbers of last year, and we're in the beginning of August, we have not 14 neighborhoods, but we have 8 neighborhoods, and more so 7 if you take out the neighborhood where most in Washington Park neighborhood, 7 neighborhoods that account for 45+% of the gun violence. So 7 neighborhoods, just to make that of substance, Milwaukee is a city of 190 neighborhoods. And 7 neighborhoods account for 45+% of your gun violence. And in those neighborhoods, you're going to find issues of, communities of color, economic challenges, education challenges, issues with mental health, drugs, the whole gamut of issues that deal with not just police, but it deals with a number of different services that can come together if we were to work together to really make that change.
Can I jump in with a follow-up on that one too, even though this is not my question? I've had some comments this morning from people who saw pictures of that fundraiser and no one in those pictures was wearing masks, despite, you're wearing one now and there's a mask mandate now for the Milwaukee Police Department. Was that a little bit problematic? How could everybody there have possibly been tested and be safe and not be distancing and not wearing masks?
I can't answer for the others. I had my mask and I took my mask off to take some pictures, knowing that was going to hit the media. So I can't answer for the others, but I can answer for me. I did have my mask and I did attend that, and understand what you're saying.
I'm going to jump in if I can very quick. It's a visual thing. We've been asked by some of our participants that are watching. We could just get the chief more into the camera. If you can move a little bit toward, there we go. Much better. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Corey, take it away.
Hi, Chief. We've got more than 25 federal agents coming to Milwaukee. Some of them are already here. They're on their way. And you've talked about the crime numbers this year, the number of homicides. We've been told that the agents are going to be doing things different than what's gone on in Portland, that they're going to be focusing on violent crime and homicides. Can you explain how they're going to work with your department? And, you're just talking about these 7 neighborhoods. How can they do things differently than what your department's been doing? And how can they help with the crime if your own cops have not been able to fix this problem this year?
Well, we have, when I took over in 2018, I started implemented a crime strategy. It's called the Shoot Review. And the Shoot Review focuses on gun violence, and it addresses the 10% of the problem. It also addresses the locations. So the 10% of the problem are the individuals that are responsible for what's occurring. In that Shoot Review, we invite the system partners. So to define the system, it's the local, state, and federal partners to include prosecution and Department of Corrections. So that's the federal partners in this would be the ATF, it would be the FBI, it would be the United States Marshal Service, our HIDA, which is also partnered with the DA, works with HIDA. So that's another federal partner that we work with in addressing our violent crime. The federal partners attend this weekly meeting, and what the federal partners do in this review process is they work with our department personnel, which we identify as task force officers, and they work kind of as a partnership. And from that Shoot Review, identify the workload that they're going to take on. If it's to work on a particular person, group, or area, to address it through their levels. So in other words, if some of these incidents are going to occur federal charges, that's where our federal partners play a role. We're looking at gun violence, which we will be using, and we have used the ATF piece. The Operation Legend, which was Operation Relentless Pursuit, one of the biggest pieces in those initiatives is the funding that comes from the federal government. And some of that funding will go to our department to help us pay for some of the investigations that we're going to be implementing. So that's how we work together on the problems that we need to work on here in Milwaukee.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Go ahead.
Good.
So I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about Officer Mattioli. Now, your office has said that now that the Fire and Police Commission has taken over his disciplinary proceedings, you no longer have the power to fire him. But according to some readings of the statute, you do. And the fact that he hasn't been fired means he's still being paid by the taxpayers. So why do you feel you don't have the authority to fire him? Do you think he should be fired? And how has the commission's decision to take over that investigation impacted morale in the department and your ability to do your job as a leader?
To be able to render a decision on the individual has to have due process, which would be implemented by the investigation that we, the Milwaukee Police Department, would have done. But by it being the authority of the Fire and Police Commission to take that investigation away from us and to give us the orders to cease the investigation, I can't investigate it to render a decision. I don't have the findings. Had it been left under my authority, I would have been able to complete the investigation in a timely manner and render a decision to do that. As far as my opinion on what I would do for future litigation, I cannot render that until the investigation complete. Otherwise, I would gladly give you what my opinion would be on there. Let me back up a little bit to also say, I think the way the Milwaukee Police Department handled that investigation was textbook, meaning from the initial date of the incident. I responded to that scene. I realized what had transpired. And for transparency purposes, we contacted the district attorney's office to handle that investigation. They responded, and for extra transparency, they had the Wisconsin State Crime Lab handle the crime scene piece of that investigation. By handing the investigation over to them, there's vital pieces of information that I would need to conduct my internal investigation and proceed that way. I cannot conduct my internal piece until they rendered a decision on their criminal piece, which was then made public. And when it's made public, then it's made public for me to now handle internal. That was not completed until the criminal complaint came out. And we only had possession of that case for a week. We were already in the process of that internal. But when we were told to cease that investigation, we had to hand over everything we had to the Fire and Police Commission. So therefore, I never had the opportunity to render a decision on Mattioli's future as far as it is with the Milwaukee Police Department.
And just going back to the second part of my question, how has the fact that that investigation has been claimed by the Fire and Police Commission affected morale in the department, and how has it affected your authority in terms of internal investigations and discipline?
Well, I like to, and you may see it in the future, I like to show the process to the public for a kind of view of transparency. And I learned this through a media roundtable, that some of the things that come in question, it's not a bad idea to show the media how those processes work, so you can get an idea how we do it. And we're in the process of showing how our department comes across an internal investigation, how we handle it, and how we come to a final conclusion. You may see a piece on that in the near future. So just to show the transparency that these things are somewhat complicated, and that's due to state statute, due processes, 7 points of just cause that a department member has. It's even though I may have an opinion on what I'm going to do, it's very difficult to say that in the initial stages without a proper internal investigation.
If I might, Gina, I'd like to footnote your question. Between 1987 and 1992, I was on the Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission. I was appointed by Henry Meyer, then the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, after I had left a position as an assistant United States attorney in Milwaukee. During that period of time, Harold Breyer, who was obviously a decades-long incumbent in the office of the police department, was struggling with us, the commission, in our attempt to have him carry out what was a consent decree entered into by the city of Milwaukee and the United States Department of Justice, within which the city of Milwaukee essentially conceded that there was racial discrimination in hiring and promoting policemen. And they set forth a remedial formula for moving down the road with hiring, which included giving separate tests to minorities and majorities, creating 2 lists, and then appointing 2 members of the minority list for each member of the majority list before they would become police officers. But all during that complicated, tense period of time, the Fire and Police Commission never once took away from the police department the investigation of the behavior of a police officer. That always was something that would be handled internally. Now, in the event that in the investigation of a Milwaukee police officer, there seemed to be probable cause to believe there may be some criminal law implications, then the district attorney would have to decide whether or not the district attorney's office, with its own essentially client, the Milwaukee Police Department, should stay in the case, and frequently they went out of town to get it. But if the police department, after investigation, brought any kind of discipline that called for a 5-day suspension or more, that person had a right to appear before the Fire and Police Commission and have a hearing to determine A, whether or not discipline was justified, and B, whether or not the quantity of discipline was justified. And frequently, we had hearings, 2 or 3 of them a week, that sometimes went into the early hours of the morning because the chief of police wanted to break the back of the Fire and Police Commission, I think. And it troubles me today, based on my experience, that the Fire and Police Commission has now taken on the role of investigating the behavior of police officers when in the process of the individual who gets disciplined, they have as a first course of reviewing the discipline and the quantity of the discipline. They're going to be talking to the judge and the cop all in one place. And I think that they shouldn't go there. These are people that are part-timers. I know they have professional staff. They're well short of the competence that the Milwaukee Police Department has in the area of investigations. And it troubles me, and I'm surprised that what appears to be a response to public outcry on the Mattioli case jumped in and said, we're taking this off, you police back away. It makes no sense.
Thank you for that addendum. I also have not been aware in the almost 20 years I've been here of the Fire and Police Commission actually doing an investigation of a police officer's behavior. So thank you for that clarification. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Gina. In the midst of obviously a critical week when it comes to the 11 directives handed down by the FPC, and on a critical day when it comes to that as well, Spectrum News 1's Courtney Garish caught up with both of you last week. And Mr. Gimbel, you had mentioned that you don't have confidence that if you fulfill the 11 directives, the chief will continue in his role. Chief Morales, your take on that?
Well, I'm going to continue. I stated this a number of times. My energy comes from the people in the city of Milwaukee. I've received outpouring of support regarding, the last couple of weeks from the community. It's a part that you don't really see on social media, or you don't see it on in regular media or even at City Hall, but I see it in the community. Being born and raised here and knowing a lot of the community, knowing these neighborhoods, these 190 neighborhoods, that gives me my energy to be here and continue to serve. And I will serve until told otherwise.
Let me add a footnote to that one as well, because I made the comment last week that I was of the view that the Fire and Police Commission are on a mission to fire the chief of police, who's sitting right next to me here during this program. And I have some feeling of support for my conclusion based on the fact that during the course of the interaction between the Fire and Police Commissioner and Chief Morales during the past 2 months, more particularly during the last 4.5 weeks, a police officer, an incumbent police officer, we learned was approached by a Fire and Police Commissioner. And he was informed that the commission is going to fire Chief Morales and that this person who was having a conversation with a commissioner was going to be at least a candidate in the field for possible appointment. Now, I can't disclose the name of the commissioner because that wasn't disclosed to us. I won't disclose the name of the employee at this point in time because he is still a member of the Milwaukee Police Department. But I can tell you this, that from my point of view as Chief Morales's lawyer, that conversation suggests to me that the Fire and Police Commission has zero attentiveness to their limitations. They have an obligation as a public body to announce to the public when they're having a meeting, what the topic will be in the conversation at the meeting, and then public can attend or give comments about it. There was no such notice that there were going to be conversations with people on the street about the future employment of Chief Morales. And there certainly has been there was no conversation that was noticed in a meeting that there was going to be a 7-page series of directives issued to the chief, which if he didn't respond to in a timely fashion, could give rise to their having a basis to terminate him for cause.
Quickly to that end, a quick follow-up on that. If, when this is all said and done, you end up not serving any longer as the current Milwaukee Police Chief, what piece of advice would you give to whomever, male or female, takes that role going forward, specifically when it comes to dealing with the Fire and Police Commission in Milwaukee?
I'll say it tongue in cheek, and this is what every chief says if they're, if I were to leave or if I were to be removed. It's the incoming chief. If there's any issues when you take over, you open the first envelope, and that first envelope is going to say, blame the former chief for everything that went wrong. Okay. And then the second piece to that one is if you continue to get crap, you blame yourself. All right. And then the third envelope would be fill out 3 more envelopes for the next chief to take over for your position.
Thank you, Chief. Corey, go ahead.
Chief, the directives that they gave you, did you feel that those were attainable and in the amount of time that they gave you to fulfill them? And then the second part is, if you do lose your job over this, what are your plans? Do you plan to sue the city?
Well, I can tell you right now what my plan is to fulfill those directives and do everything I can. It is consuming my executive staff and some of my other staff, the civilian staff that I have pulling some of the data. It's pushing us offline to do what, as I would say, to deal with some of the other issues that are going on in the city of Milwaukee. We have a DNC in less than 2 weeks that's occurring. And the first 13 days after I received these directives, we've had 10 homicides and 64 non-fatal shootings. For me as a chief of police, the crime is one of the important pieces for me to have a grasp and a handle of. But when I'm doing it in working on these directives, it takes not only myself, but my executive staff offline to do that. So it's of concern.
And I might say that I was present the evening when the commission promulgated the directives to the chief. The very next day, I made several attempts to contact the executive director of the Fire and Police Commission with 2 immediate goals in view. One was to get a copy of that document, which they read. And by the by, even though there was some of the directives that called for a response within 7 days, the chief didn't get a copy of the directives until well into the day after the directives were written, I think somewhere around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was never contacted by the executive director, even though I left phone messages for her and sent a text message and emails. I wrote a formal letter seeking to have the dates of return on the documents requested postponed until the 28th day of August. And that was for the purpose of having the chief allow those people who would be taken away from their everyday police duties, essentially doing this housekeeping chore for the Fire and Police Commission. And I did get a letter back a couple of days later, the content of which said this: I have your letter. for the commission to consider this. We have to get them together. That's difficult. And if you think there's any one directive that's going to take more time than another, then please advise. Well, I thought that was a stall, and I thought it was a stall aimed at causing the chief to trip and miss the deadline days. So I abandoned that. I have learned since that time that a representative of Milwaukee City Attorney's Office has gone to the executive director of the Fire and Police Commission, and on behalf of the city attorney has asked the commission to postpone the meeting and the requirement of production of the records called for in the directives until the 31st of August. That request has not been dealt with either. So the Fire and Police Commission is acting alone. They are ignoring and being, in my view, quite unpolite to the chief, his lawyer, and the city's lawyer, who at the end of the day advises them.
Thank you. To the second part of the question, though, what happens if the chief does lose his job? What's the next step?
Well, he is an employee under an at-will contract, and there are several potential legal remedies that could be pursued. At this point in time, I am hoping that the awareness of the commission about the public outcry on their behavior will cause them to pause before they take the action of terminating the chief. And that would be something that would, in my view, would be welcomed by the city. If, on the other hand, they don't, then the chief and legal counsel and those people who are close to him will have to make a decision about whether or not they want to go down the road and litigate that kind of a result. But there is no game plan today with a certain form of potential litigation review.
I'm sorry, can I just ask one more question? In December, his contract was renewed. What has happened between now and December? Is this because of Mattioli, or is it because of the Black Lives Matter protests? What has gone on between December and now?
Well, I think you got to ask the Fire and Police Commission that, because running a police department in a major metropolitan city is a tough job, and the chief doesn't get a menu that says, here's what's going to happen tomorrow on the streets of Milwaukee. You're going to have so many rapes, so many murders, so many domestic violence issues. So every day is a challenging new adventure or misadventure or disadventure for the police department. But what I think could be a factor here, and I've said this publicly as my own personal opinion. I've been practicing law in Milwaukee for 60 years, and I've been downtown. And I can tell you that the Fire and Police Commission will have a hard time looking in the mirror to find somebody who is well behaved. For example, the chairman of the Fire and Police Commission has been asked by the major newspaper in Milwaukee to resign. Community groups have asked him to resign. The commission hired an investigator to investigate a certain activity of the Fire and Police Commission and its chairman, which was concluded with a report, and that person was Mel Johnson, who spent 30 years as an assistant U.S. attorney in Milwaukee, a very respected and aware person. And in that investigation, the chairman of the Fire and Police Commission refused to talk to the investigator that they had hired. And in his report, Mr. Johnson said that the chairman of the Fire and Police Commission was dishonest. Now, you asked the question about what happened from December when the contract was signed with today. Well, as I have said before, the mirror should be put in the face of the commission. What's happened with them that makes them now on this quest? And I suggest that the chief is an attempt by them to distract from their own misbehavior. It's an attempt by them to distract from their own obedience to the rules and statutes that govern them. And that's very troubling.
Gina, go ahead.
Yeah, so we could go down so many roads with these Fire and Police Commission questions. I want to want to ask two things about that. One is there's been a lot of talk about the directive of trying to come up with a new standard operating procedure for the use of OC spray and other less lethal methods to control some of these protests, particularly at the DNC. So what are your options in terms of refusing to follow directives that may not be practical in terms of keeping officers and the community safe? And then is bringing in 900 National Guard members either a workaround for being able to use those strategies, or are they simply coming in as replacements for the departments who have pulled out?
Okay, first, we're still working on the plan as far as staffing the event, whether it's going to be sworn or National Guard. As far as dealing with a civil disturbance, the training that goes into it is we follow the national guidelines, and most law enforcement agencies follow the national guidelines, so that if we were to work side by side with the National Guard or the federal law enforcement officers or the state, county, local, that we are unified in the rules of engagement piece. So that part of it, regardless of who's here, we'll be working together and in sync with that piece. As far as the directive, we had that meeting last Thursday, and that was pushed off to, I believe, September to make a decision over the policy. As far as to date and for the DNC, there is no change in the policy to have us change how we handle civil disturbances. So none of that has changed, and we will be moving forward in our planning for the DNC.
Great, that's good information. And my follow-up question to that is, what would it take for you to once again have a productive relationship with the Fire and Police Commission? Do you think the personnel there would have to change, or is there anything that you and Mr. DeVogus could do to actually get back on the same page?
Well, I think you know what I would like not to have the commission be able to use as a cause for some discipline against the chief is that he made some critical statement about the personalities on the commission. I think it's fair to say, Gina, that unless the Fire and Police Commission comes to a sense that working with the chief of police and the executives in the police department is much more productive from the community's point of view than being adversarial. And as I said earlier in this hour, we had some push and shove matches with Harold Breyer back in his day, but that was not what we wanted to have. The chief has been open to having conversations with the commission about how they can cumulatively, as partners, serve the safety interest of Milwaukee. But the commission has chosen rather to use the adversarial method. In fact, just as an example, if you have, and I'm sure each of you does, the document that incorporates the directives to the chief, there is this predicate state of whereas clauses that essentially suggests that the chief has closed his door, closed his phone, and closed his contact with the Fire and Police Commission on vital matters to their functioning. Those whereas clauses are the bunk. Everything that they've asked for in one form or another was communicated to the Fire and Police Commission. The chief has never been reluctant to recognize and respect the responsibility and the authorities of the Fire and Police Commission, and he still does. And he knows that they have the power of life and death over his job. On the other hand, he's not willing to put one of them out on a street corner with a gun or a whip or with a microphone and say, take over the function of the police, because he would be disturbing the public, and they couldn't do it. but they seem to be wanting to do it through this hammer that they're using on the back of his head called directives.
And just one final question, follow up on that before I kick to Jason. Earlier, there was a question about what has changed in terms of the Fire and Police Commission. And I can't help but wonder if one of the things that changed was an earlier interview that you did with us at the Journal Sentinel, where you had talked about promotion lists not being handled expeditiously by the FPC. Do you think that your public criticism of their operations could possibly be one of the reasons why they're taking this tactic now?
I don't know. I could tell you that the promotional lists have not only been a problem for myself, but for my predecessor. I could tell you that there haven't been any promotional lists, and that is, I don't want to call them, let's not call them promotional lists. They're staffing lists, because those are staffing issues in supervisory, management, and investigative positions. Those are all areas that are a risk when you don't fill them, especially in supervisory and management. That's a part of our ACLU lawsuit, that we have the proper supervision to apply some of the mandates that come from the agreement. If anyone looks at a consent decree in another city, the supervisory staffing has to be there to hold the front line accountable. So by not filling these, and from day one when I took over, those are the areas that I have been addressing in City Hall at all levels, from the Common Council to the Fire and Police Commission, as well as the mayor.
Thank you. All right, Jason, over to you.
Chief, rapid fire now, as time is of the essence. The Democratic National Convention, of course, less than 2 weeks away. A lot of questions still about who's coming to Milwaukee, if anyone is coming to Milwaukee at this point. What's the latest estimate that you have gotten from the host committee at the Democratic National Convention on how many people we can expect in Wisconsin that week? And with delegates essentially being told to stay away, is it as big a deal that these various law enforcement agencies and police forces won't be supporting Milwaukee police during that event if no one's really here to begin with?
Okay, well, the DNC, we're still under the national spotlight, and we have to prepare the security for that. And we're going to continue, and that changes on a regular basis depending on who's coming and who doesn't come. So we still have to prepare. Whether we say half of it or most of it's going to be virtual, there are still going to be delegates that are here, and we have to protect it. We still have an area that's going to be protected, and we're still going to have potential protests that come from it that need to be monitored. My prayer is that it's all done peacefully, and that we're able to manage a peaceful, productive event. And as far as the law enforcement agencies that have decided not to come, well, our planning, even though some of it is going to be downsized, we still need to secure the city and need to secure the event. So we're still working on identifying the best possible way to secure it, and work with the ones that are coming.
And even the fact that the convention may not draw people who will make the decisions about the Democratic platform, the nominee, the vice presidential nominee, this will still be a place where the media will come to essentially pass through to the universe what the Democrats are doing for the 2020 election. And that's like putting bait in a rat trap for protesters who want to spew whatever their political agenda is, if it's contrary to the Democratic Party platform. And that's a place for police, because you could have 2 delegates here and you could have 20,000 protesters.
Quick follow-up. Do you think that we could have that many people here in Milwaukee that week?
It's hard to tell. We plan for it all.
All right, rapid fire. Corey, back to you.
Chief, speaking of protesters, different types of protesters, they've been at your house over the last several weeks. Have you gone outside to confront them at all?
No, no, I haven't.
Okay. And Alderwoman Dodd put out a statement last week asking them to leave you alone. And then the protesters went to her house, and then she had a change of heart. What do you think about that? Do you think she was intimidated?
I can't say what her thoughts are. Didn't speak to her about that piece. But what I can tell you is when you do have protests, when you do have protests, to go to any leader's house, whether it's mine, whether it's the mayor, whether it's the district attorney, what is the ultimate goal and what is the ask? Because oftentimes, who are you affecting? And when you're out videotaping children or family, the children to that leader, what is the goal? What are you trying to accomplish by doing that?
Folks, I'm going to hop in at this point so we can squeeze in some questions from our audience, if that's all right with everyone. The first question, thanks for your patience, by the by, and sticking around and waiting for this portion of the program, folks. The firing of rubber bullets at protesters was a first for the city. Can you offer any defense for this, Chief?
At this time, we're going to be talking about it in other formal events, so I'll refrain from answering that question at this time.
All right. For Frank Gimbel, Mayor Barrett has said he does not have authority in this matter, but some community leaders believe he does. Should Mayor Barrett step in and block the Fire and Police Commission from proceeding with their directives and possibly removing the chief from his position?
Well, let me answer it from 2 points of view. From the point of view of rendering a legal opinion, there is language in the state statute establishing essentially the authority of the Fire and Police Commission that does give the mayor the authority to overrule a directive of the Fire and Police Commission. Now, having said that, I am not lawyering Tom Barrett. I've known him for 50 years, since he was a law clerk in federal court, but he's got his own lawyers and will have to decide that. From a political point of view, I know that a number of people have contacted my office looking to find out in what way they can step forward and in a productive way help the chief during these very, very tense and difficult times for him. And I've said, talk to the mayor, or talk to your common councilman, or communicate to the Fire and Police Commission as an interested citizen. And I do know, and I have seen some correspondence and some communications that have gone to the mayor's office, and they don't leave a course of action for the mayor that's dubious. It's very clear that there's a strong group of people in this city that think that the Fire and Police Commission, in their actions against Chief Morales, is a runaway train and they should be stopped.
Another question for the chief. Do you believe your race is playing a role in what you're facing right now?
It's hard to tell. For me, born and raised in the city, I want to say that, again, I'm committed to the city. It's hard to answer that question.
All right, I have one more question. Question for the chief. Can you talk about where things stand with responding to the first directive, which is due today? Can you tell us what your response includes and when it will be released?
We responded to directives as of last week. We had within 7 days of the directives to hand over certain items which we have up to date complied.
Very good. And one more question, Chief. A community leader said yesterday at a public event that the police department does not respect the Black community. What is your response to criticism like that?
People are entitled to their opinion. I was born and raised in the city of Milwaukee and know several different leaders throughout the city. I'm committed to them. Again, people are always going to give their criticisms. My thing is, I work for the city of Milwaukee, the residents that live in the city of Milwaukee, and I'll continue to serve them.
Chief Morales, Frank Gimbel, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks as well to our panel, Gina Barton of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Jason Fechner of Spectrum News One, and also Corey Hess of Wisconsin Public Radio. We turn and burn pretty quick here at the Milwaukee Press Club. We're back again tomorrow with another virtual newsmaker. This time it will be Milwaukee County Board Chair Marcelia Nicholson, our headline newsmaker lunch hour. Another noon event, noon until 1 tomorrow. Hope you can join us for that one. If you like what you saw today, if you support our mission, backing local journalism, backing local journalists, and also supporting young journalists coming up through our endowment fund, college education in terms of scholarships and such, please go to our website, MilwaukeePressClub.org, and you'll find our virtual tip jar right there, and we would appreciate anything that you could give us moving forward. Appreciate everybody spending time with us today, dialing in, tuning in, and hope you'll join us for more. Newsmaker virtual events. Someday we'll be back at the Newsmaker, or I should say the Newsroom Hub, and do these things like we used to do them. But until then, we will do them this way because this is what we are supposed to be doing, keeping you in touch with your community. Thank you once again for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully at noon.
Thank you. God bless you all.
See y'all.